Hey, welcome. This is the second video about the Northern Ireland timeline. If you missed the first one, you can go back and find it there. This video will look at the period 1980 right up to the Good Friday Agreement in 1998. The last video stopped at the hunger strikes, and we've seen that one of the reactions to the hunger strike was that there was an increase in support for Sinn Féin and the IRA, and Sinn Féin decided to change its tactics in 1981, that it would begin standing for elections and also continue to support the IRA campaign. So this strategy became known as the ballot box and Armalite strategy. Okay. The first success that Sinn Féin have really is 1983 when Gerry Adams is elected MP for West Belfast. But they had other successes as well, and they were winning seats in councils. And I think I remember telling you that Strabane District Council was one of the first councils to have a Sinn Féin chairman. All of this is quite worrying to the British government, but not just to the British government, but also to the Irish government, who fear the growth of this radical Sinn Féin party with its connections with the IRA. So in 1985, the British and Irish governments signed a treaty, the first treaty the British and Irish governments had signed since the Anglo-Irish Treaty of 1921. So this is a new Anglo-Irish Agreement signed between Margaret Thatcher and Garret Fitzgerald. And that agreement said that there would be no change to the position of Northern Ireland unless the majority wanted it. But it also set up a secretariat where members of the Southern government and members of the British government would meet to discuss issues around Northern Ireland. Now, to Unionists, this sounded like steps towards a united Ireland, but it wasn't, but that's how it sounded to them. Thatcher and Fitzgerald also agreed to cooperate on security, so cross-border security, basically. And the border was a huge issue, which enabled the IRA to operate because they would make their bombs in the south and bring them over the border and so on. So the two governments are now working together to try and make life difficult for the IRA. However, Unionists reacted angrily to the good, keep calling this the Good Friday Agreement, to the Anglo-Irish Agreement, and they set up the Ulster Says No campaign. So they had a day of action where they called a strike, a one-day strike. They held a huge rally at the City Hall in September of 1985 where Ian Paisley gave his famous never, never, never speech. However, the Anglo-Irish Agreement survived and was the first sign that the two governments now are going to start working together for peace. Okay. Between that and 1990, we have secret talks going on between Gerry Adams and John Hume. Gerry Adams, the leader of Sinn Féin, and John Hume, the leader of the SLP. And Hume is speaking to the British government, and he becomes convinced that Sinn Féin and the IRA want some sort of peace settlement. Okay? And he believes that if the British and Irish governments can say the right things, the IRA will stop its violence. In 1992, Sinn Féin launched Towards a Lasting Peace, where they set out their conditions for peace, okay? And it shows that the Republican movement is now starting to think about a post-conflict society. Then in 1993, Prime Minister John Major and Albert Reynolds at Christmas time, you might remember them standing in front of a Christmas tree, issued the Downing Street Declaration. And the aim of the Downing Street Declaration was trying to say those words that the IRA needed to hear in order for it to stop its campaign. So what did the Downing Street Declaration say? Well, it promised parity of esteem, meaning that Republicans and Unionists and Nationalists and Loyalists are all entitled to hold their beliefs and can hold their heads high and will be respected. But that unity in Ireland would require the consent of a majority of the people in Northern Ireland, which meant that Northern Ireland's place in the UK was safe so long as the majority of people wanted it to be safe. But this gives the IRA or Republicans an opportunity to work for unity. All they need to do is to get the consent of the majority in Northern Ireland. Right, the eventual reaction to this was that in 1994, the IRA called a ceasefire in August, and that was followed by a loyalist ceasefire. The IRA said in their statement that they released that they hoped that this would lead to talks about a peace settlement. But the problem was that the IRA never mentioned anything about decommissioning their weapons, or didn't say that their ceasefire would be permanent. And the British government under John Major refused to talk to Sinn Féin until the IRA said that their total cessation was permanent and that they would hand in their weapons. This meant that in February 1996, about a year and a half later, the IRA ceasefire broke down and you had the Docklands bomb. And the IRA issued a statement after that blaming the collapse of their ceasefire on the British government, on John Major, for failing to talk to Sinn Féin. And you might remember at this stage, Sinn Féin weren't even allowed to be heard on the TV. They were allowed to be seen, but their words had to be spoken by actors. Right. Everything changes in 1997 with the election of Tony Blair. So we get a Labour government elected in Britain in May 1997. And Tony Blair changes British policy because he says he will allow Sinn Féin into talks if the IRA announces a ceasefire. And shortly afterwards, a new IRA ceasefire is announced, which was exactly the same as the first one in terms that it didn't mention that the ceasefire was permanent and it didn't mention anything about decommissioning. All it said was the IRA were stopping all activities to allow time for peace talks. So Sinn Féin were welcomed into the talks. The DUP weren't happy about that and they walked out of the talks. But eventually all the other parties, except for the DUP, the Democratic Unionist Party led by Ian Paisley, every other party except them signed up to the Good Friday Agreement in 1998. Okay, and the Good Friday Agreement said that Northern Ireland should have a power-sharing government, that the prisoners should be released, and that decommissioning should begin, and they would look into changing policing and stuff like that. There were other aspects of the Good Friday Agreement as well, such as the Council of the Isles, whereby there would be some forum set up for all the governments of Ireland and Britain and Scotland and so on to talk to each other. And there would be cross-border cooperation as well between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. This referendum, or this agreement, was signed up to by the parties, but it had to go to a referendum both in the north of Ireland, Northern Ireland, and in the Republic of Ireland. And the vote showed that 71% of the people in the north and 96% of the people in the south supported the Good Friday Agreement. And that was a huge vote of confidence in what had been agreed. So by the following year, 1999, a new Northern Ireland executive was set up with David Trimble as First Minister, leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, and the Deputy Leader of the SDLP, Seamus Milne, as his Deputy First Minister. Okay, so that is the story, guys, and you need to know that timeline pretty well in order to succeed in this exam. But not only do you need to know the events in order that they happen, but you need to understand the reactions and what reactions those had. And I've been talking a lot about reactions this last while. So do your revision, make sure you know the order things happening, and do your best in your exam. Best of luck.